Hi plants, so I like to consider myself a bit of a writer. Hey, these words I'm saying don't just come out of nowhere, but video making can get a bit tiring, so I'm experimenting with some fan fiction of sorts. The issue is, it's a follow-up to an already pre-established show, so I'm struggling to figure out how to naturally follow up on what is set up. I could raise the stakes, but what if the stakes get too high? I could add more characters, but what if there are too many characters? Hell, I could make them have to save the Rex channel. You know, as long as there's also a love triangle and an existential crisis, I could get 10 episodes out of that. Fionna and Cake. I covered this back when its full season aired, and if you want a video of me just gushing for 5 minutes straight, go ahead and check it out. Just don't do it in front of me. I die of embarrassment watching things I uploaded 2 minutes ago. In summary though, I thought it was fantastic. Not only a great way to thematically age up the series for the audience that grew up with it, but a fun exploration of Adventure Time's multiverse and an epilogue to one of its strongest characters. But despite only being a single season, its ending felt very definitive. Even a few people who worked on it referred to it as a miniseries, so when showrunner Adam Muto started mentioning the idea of a second season, I was a little surprised. Even more surprised when I actually got renewed for one. You know the amount of animated Max originals that actually get renewed? Typically they just banish these things into the Shadow Realm. But I was still excited to see what they were cooking up. Even during a 1.5 year wait where the only thing we learned was Huntress Wizard would be involved via art on a storyboard artist's name tag and a 480p picture of a cast list. Yay. Hell, even when the season was close, information was dire. Cartoon Network's social media team dropped one image and then dipped. The release date was accidentally put on HBO Max in September, then removed. They officially revealed the date alongside random screenshots in early October, but then didn't release a trailer until the show had a New York Comic Con panel on October 12th, less than 2 weeks before it premiered. That's nice. But despite the lack of marketing, the minute it premiered, I was seated, and I continued to be seated right when it premiered for the entire season. Honestly, I'm really glad they went with a completely weekly schedule this time around. The 2-a-week approach of season 1 worked, but being able to watch this from October to Christmas Day was a nice treat. And you know, it's easy to say this was worth the wait, and everybody nah, that would be too simple, could you imagine? I think it's safe to say Fionna and Cake season 2 is a bit divisive. Now, of course, I saw a lot of this on Twitter, which isn't the best representative of what actual people think, but when even major Adventure Time accounts were having issues with this season, it was apparent the response was a little mixed. So today, I want to go over some of the common complaints, address my take on them, and save the world or something. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, this script is a bit of a mess, so let me just start talking. Oh, and spoiler warning for like the rest of this, I mentioned practically every major plot point. So season 2 of Adventure Time Fionna and Cake takes place shortly after the end of season 1 and follows our titular protagonists getting used to their urban lifestyle following their multiversal journey and canonization of their universe. At the same time, after Huntress Wizard discovers Finn suffering from a mysterious poison, she must uncover the secrets of the Heart of the Forest to save his life. So you can see where the first issue is, right? Yeah, season 2 follows a bit of a different format than the first. Outside of Huntress herself, some dream shenanigans, and the penultimate episode, all cast spends all their time in their own world, dealing with internal conflicts, romance drama, and primarily the sweet spot, Gary's new bakery that Fionna has to raise money to save from being demolished by her former boss Queenie. This was a little surprising. I felt season 1 did a great job using the multiverse to create actually interesting what-if scenarios for these characters, so I just kept expecting them to hop dimensions again at some point. But all we really got was a few glimpses at the worlds we already visited in season 1. Now, honestly, after I realized what they were going for, I genuinely didn't mind a more laid-back, grounded take on these characters. The first teaser for season 1 that mainly focused on Fionna World is what sold me on the show in the first place, and it allows for some really great character explorations. Even if some of the plots themselves go on way too long. Might as well go over all these real quick, so let's start with the positives. Simon is out. Well, that doesn't sound too great. Nah, I'm okay with how the season used him. In the first few episodes, he's moved in with PB and Marcy, he's teaching at Wizard School, and he's keeping up with Fionna, and well, by the end, he's mainly just another character trying to help Finn. It's a nice way to continue his story while slowly moving focus away from him. I do wish he had more interactions with Fionna though. Fionna's phone breaks midway through the season and that seemingly destroys any connection she has with him, which sucks. I love the dynamic they had going on. His absence allows for a lot more focus on Fionna World's supporting cast, which has had a lot of changes, if you define the personality of cartoon characters based on their casting. I'm sure the recast everyone noticed was Gary, going from Andrew Reynolds to Harvey Guillen. Now this isn't unusual for this character, the original series had him go from Neil Patrick Harris to Keith Ferguson, but honestly I'm a little confused why Andrew couldn't return considering he's still doing Invincible and he made time for 58 episodes of Big Mouse. And as much as I like Harvey, his version is easily the most different take on this character yet. His voice is a lot lighter and sweet, which takes some time to get used to. It probably doesn't help that, despite his bakery being a crucial plot point here and us getting a small exploration of his family life, he doesn't have a lot to do here outside of Marshall's story. Maybe if Harvey sticks around for another season and is given more to do, I'd get more used to his take, but considering how often this character is recast, I'm not sure if I'll get the chance. Similarly, Marshall Lee has gone from Donald Glover to Chris Collins. To be honest, the fact Glover even reprised the role in season 1 was surprising to me. He's become a much bigger star than when he had his first appearance in 2013 with all these movies, the music career, and of course, his song SquarePants appearing in season 1 episode 3 of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. But considering all that and the fact he just revealed he had a stroke last year, I can't blame him for stepping back from this. Chris is a great replacement, does a good job having a take similar enough to Glover, and character-wise, he has a pretty great arc this time around. The way the show dives deeper into his relationship with his mom, and by comparison, his healthier connection with this world's version of Simon is very clever and sweet. Even if this world's equivalent to dementia being a restraining order is a little funny. The finale seemingly teases he'll be getting into more magical antics next time around, and I'm excited to see how it all plays out. In terms of unrecast, Prismo is back to being voiced by Kumail Nanjiani. The reasons for his recast in the first place seem to be a whole mess, so I'm glad he's back, even if his role in this season is a bit weird. Dude spends the entire season saying he can't do anything and then proceeding to not do anything. He tells Scarab he can't deal with Huntress switching dimensions. He tells PB, Marcy, and Simon he can't help Finn. And then for some reason, he just keeps glitching. Definitely feels like it's setting something up for potential season 3 or some other sort of spin-off. I'm also glad his replacement VA Sean Rahani managed to stay in the show as comic room and deliver some new lore through narration at the beginning of a few episodes. While some of Prismo's laid-back nature is in the character, I'd probably not realize it was the same VA if it wasn't for the credits. It's a good performance. Anyways, time for the characters I should have talked about first, the main trio, starting with Huntress Wizard, who herself has been recast for a third time, from Maria Bamford, Olivia Olsen if you count the games, sticking with Jenny Slate for a while, to now Ashley Borch. I feel like she's one of those voice actresses who is in everything, but I think she's mainly just in stuff that I like to watch. Though notably, she was a writer on the latter half of Adventure Time, including the episode Flute Spell, which was Huntress's first lead role, so this sort of feels like a full circle moment, even if it was unintentional. I like her performance here. Huntress is a character who intentionally holds her emotions inside, so the fact Borch not only manages to keep up that facade while still allowing us to hear what she's actually feeling is really impressive. And her arc here is fantastic. As a character who only became important late into the original show's run, I've always felt like there's been more to explore with her and her relationship with Finn, so the fact that that's a big focus this season is great. She practically dies, hops universes, and kills to save this man, but is still afraid to commit to him. So the way Fionna influences her to open up with her over-the-top acts of love is really clever, and what it leads to in the season finale is really sweet. But despite all of that, the best character arc this season belonged to the cat. Despite going through the biggest physical changes in season 1, Cake as a character didn't feel fully explored, and the ending message seemingly clashed with her existence. Fionna learned to appreciate her normal world, but Cake obviously didn't revert back to a regular cat, because that would be sad. Thankfully, this contrast is exactly what's explored this season. She has an apartment, but is filled with straws. She has a crush on Emkron, but always shapeshifts to look more human around him. She could be any shape she wants, but often transforms to entertain others. She is essentially putting on a show for everybody. Her struggle with this is honestly the best part of this entire season. It reminded me a lot of the Strongest Jake stuff from the original, and the show managed to do it while still somehow making her the most well put together character. I do think the conclusion with Comic Worm is a little funny though. Sweet, definitely, but I don't get why the show acted like she was gonna stick around him when she returns to Fionna World the very next episode, and also this easily implies every version of this character is attracted to guys with lanky bodies or the voice of Sean Rahani. Just saying, Prismo has been in mourning for years and I've seen the shipping art, there's definitely something going on there. And then there is Fionna.
Stay back, calm down, it's just a drawing.
Okay, so Fionna has a lot going on. Despite season 1 ending with her accepting her life, things still aren't great for her. Episode 1 does a great job showing how, despite being a hero to her world, the way her life was before season 1 is still affecting her. She's in a slightly better place than before, but her life is still messy. So she goes all in on being a hero, whether that's through helping Huntress, trying to save the sweet spot, or trying to find her happy ending via, you guessed it, a love triangle. And because I'm sure everybody wanted to know my thoughts on these potential bachelors, let's go through them all. Hunter. Yeah, good pick, but very safe. We hear a bit about their rough life pre-season 1, and they do occasionally get frustrated with Fionna, but they're still easily the healthiest choice here. I like how they get a bit more focus in this season, but considering their counterpart was the lead this time around, I wish we got to see more of them with Huntress. There's a little bit of beef there that I find very amusing. Fennel. This one is just funny. She's this world's version of Fawn, which is an odd character to try and translate to this non-magical suburban setting, but I like how they handled it. Fawn's jealousy of Finn's life is turned into an appreciation. The idea of being a plant is turned into a friendship with Hunter, and she is the only character who gets along with everybody. All things considered, that's not really a Fawn trait, but it's similar to Finn, so I'll allow it. Honestly, the episode where Fionna and her are looking for Felix is probably my favorite of the entire season. They may be essentially high for the entire thing, but the bond they form feels so genuine that it made me start rooting for these two to get together. Especially considering the only other option is this loser. DJ Flame, aka Felix, sucks. Okay, I should start by mentioning this is another recast, Hannibal Buress to Manny Jacinto, it's a good choice, blah blah blah. Okay, so what is this dude's problem? Typically with the Fionna World equivalent of the original show's cast, there were obvious similarities you can notice between the two. Here, outside of a passion for music and a general cool persona, I don't think these two are the same character. Well, Finn was definitely the one who ruined his relationship with Flame Princess. Felix randomly dumped Fionna over text and then became a famous DJ. This is established in the intro of the first episode of the first season. So going into this season, my thoughts on him already weren't too kind, especially with Cake essentially trying to hide his existence from Fionna. So when this dude shows up, tries to act all cool with Fionna, and personally invites her to his concert just for him to pull Fennel on stage and tongue kiss her? What? Why? Just to be a douche? Yes, you could argue Fionna should have known better, but as far as the show establishes, this is the first time they've interacted since they broke up. He's all buddy-buddy, and then he pulls this. What is his issue? And somehow, despite this, Fionna is still chill with him afterwards and invites him to perform at the Sweet Spot fundraiser. And to his credit, yes, he agrees to do so. But when it's time for the dress rehearsal, he is MIA because he's too busy doing a gig for the Lemon Cobb's dog. And I know, there was some sort of magic element involved here, and yes, he was trapped by them way longer than he intended. But man, why would you even agree to a gig that close to prior commitments and without telling your girlfriend? But sure, to his credit, he does play at the gig and helps raise money to save the Sweet Spot. But I can't actually give him credit for that because he goes backstage and kisses Fionna right in front of Fennel. Are you kidding me? And instead of apologizing for it, next time he sees Fionna, he's just like, yeah, she won't call me back, wanna get together again. And you know, I'm glad Fionna has the self-control to tone him down, but I wish she followed this by pushing him off the building because he is an asshole. Honestly, what a confusing character. The season ends with him seemingly being chill with everyone, but his actions throughout just cause more issues than anything. Maybe next season he'll get some sort of redemption, but for now, I hate this man. But the fact he's the main love interest for this season is probably part of what turned people off. Trying to do this sort of thing when the main pairing explored features a character that we can tell is wrong for our lead and already know isn't going to work out based on a decade-old storyline is at points frustrating. But I'm not gonna lie, I sort of enjoyed it. Honestly, not sure why. I think part of it was the nostalgia of reminding me of the messy relationships of the original series, regular show, or even something like Steven Universe. Weren't those elements the most controversial parts of the original series? Yeah, well, for the first two at least, but it's in this show's DNA at this point. I definitely think it took up a bit too much time, especially when it's so focused on Flame, but ultimately, the way it ties into Fionna's story I think made it mostly worth it. Fionna spends most of the season as a problem solver, whether that's with Huntress, Gary and Marshall, or for the most part, the Sweet Spot. She's pining over Felix because she believes getting together with him will be a happily ever after. Despite accepting this world, she's still not living in it, and I think that's what makes her arc this season so compelling. It reminds me a lot of Steven's arc in Steven Universe's Future, but instead of a lack of issues to fix, making her lost in her life, she forces too much on her plate and it destroys what she has. Both arcs are also very similarly controversial and lead to an even more controversial crash out. Obviously, her hopping in a bulldozer and destroying the sweet spot is a little funny, especially visually, but with how much pressure she puts on herself throughout, and her essentially ruining her relationship with everyone but Cake right at the end there, I do understand, even if it's a little insane. Now, could we have gone without the whole season focusing on a basic save the community center trope? Yeah, and honestly, having Fionna try to juggle a little bit more probably would give the season some variety and make her revelation about being there for her friends instead of trying to fix their problems hit a bit harder, but it's by no means a deal breaker for me. Wow, I just spent like 90% of the video on the character arcs, huh? Okay, let's go with some other stuff real quick. Animation, good. Might even be better than season 1, just the right amount of detail and smoothness while still feeling stylized. I know some people were irritated about how the original cast is starting to look off-model, but I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't look different enough for me to care. Plus, we got multiple guest animators in these aforementioned episode openers, a fantastic new intro, which feels very anime-like, and Rebecca Sugar came back to storyboard an episode for the first time since season 5, giving us these very pretty cake drawings. Speaking of Rebecca, music! Don't think I've seen a single person complain about this, so let me be the first to point out this season is lacking musical numbers. Only 5 new songs instead of 6? This is bogus! Honestly, not too big of an issue, especially with Sugar and Patrick McHale both returning to write songs, but their use in this season is definitely more sparse, which is a little interesting considering major characters include a DJ and a songwriter. And since I mentioned it in the season 1 review, guys, did you know this is a show for adults? I still really love their approach to adult elements here. Thematically, everything is a bit older, but tonally, it's still Adventure Time. Hard to find anything specifically to point out this time around since I was used to it, but I'm pretty sure they added a few new swears to the vocabularies. Episode 6 proves you can show as much blood as you want as long as it's not red, and there's one thing Marceline says that genuinely caught me so off guard.
Kiss can't bring somebody back from the brink of death.
That's not what you told me last night.
She says this in front of her adoptive dad, by the way. So that's really all there is with this season. While I can understand the complaints with the sweet spot and Fiona's love triangle, I don't think any of these really dampened my love for this season because its core is genuinely so strong. Even on an episode-to-episode basis, even when one character or plot wasn't moving too quickly, the show had another firing off on all cylinders. And I'd argue once we reach episode 6, every following episode from then on is great. I really don't get the narrative that this season is a disaster, or even a mess, because when you look at the full picture, sure, you might see some flaws, but still, it makes a beautiful portrait. But you know, even if I disagree with the general take on this season, these opinions aren't doing any harm, so I can't complain. Alright, we're living in hell. That would be too simple. Before this season even began airing, there was something off. Not exactly with the show itself, but the way people began talking about it, especially on Twitter, everyone's favorite website. Let me explain. Following the release of the intro, there was an influx of posts that all sounded like, "Why do all of Finn's girlfriends become lesbians? Remember when this show used to be about a boy and his dog?" And the worst of all, which I will read every word of, reminder, Adventure Time started as your young man's fantasy show, the literal dynamic of a boy and his dog, etc. in the early seasons, and by the end, it was turned into a product made for and by 30-something lesbians with contempt for the main character and premise. Oh my god, dude, this crap has 30,000 likes. 30,000 likes for a post that doesn't even have proper grammar. And of course this got worse as the season went on. Why wouldn't it? Episode 3, which ended with Fionna crying on the floor, led to such amazing posts like, "In nearly a week, this single image has destroyed the goodwill Adventure Time built up over the course of its run." For who? Idiots? Good! These guys aren't real fans. They just don't. Anybody who refers to Jake as Finn's dog clearly doesn't understand their dynamic. The idea of all of Finn's girlfriends dumping him for another girl is something that hasn't happened. Not in this season, not ever, unless if you count Princess Bubblegum as his girlfriend, which makes it very clear you don't understand their dynamic. And listen, as much as I love me some goofy adventures, acting like those episodes were the show at its peak is just wrong. These people aren't fans. Some of them even publicly admitted they didn't even watch the show long enough to see it halfway through. A few didn't even watch it at all. They aren't indicative of what real people think about this show. But when they're the ones driving the conversation, there is an issue. Nowadays, most online discussions are led by bad-faced criticism like this. Whether that is nitpicking every little animation detail, getting confused by not every little thing being explained, or in this case, criticizing a show to push your own personal agenda, the ultimate goal for most is to find a reason to complain. These posts are by misogynists, trying to tear down a show just because it features a woman in a leading role. They won't ever say that themselves, but pay attention to what they're saying, and it becomes clear what they're trying to push. How is a show spearheaded by a dude made by and for lesbians? How did Rebecca Sugar ruin the series if she started working on it during its full season and left halfway through? These complaints don't make sense, but because they push this message of woman bad, people who never even gave a damn about the show will tear it down, when truthfully, everything Fionna does this season is something Finn has done before. I know on the romantic front, people argue Finn had all this messy drama as a teen, while Fionna is a grown adult, but are we really gonna act like Finn is much better at romance as an adult? He was stuck in a situationship for at least 12 years. There was also clearly an element of homophobia and transphobia here. This season prominently features two queer couples and confirms another character as non-binary. For a show that's been trying to include these characters around censors for years, the fact they're able to so casually is amazing. But to these people, it's an unexcusable flaw. The issue is, I don't think these terrible criticisms are ever going to leave the conversation, and honestly, they might be getting worse. A few months ago, the new SpongeBob Big Guy Pants Okay movie, which is good by the way, check it out if you like the talking cheese, was being slandered as a product of evil pedophiles in Hollywood for really stupid reasons. Like, come on, I don't think a butt joke in a kid's movie is that serious. But these weren't just regular agenda pushing, these efforts were being promoted and paid for by the studio behind the religious film David, which was opening the same day as SpongeBob. If these methods are now seen as effective enough marketing, we are doomed. I guess the point is we have to pay attention to where criticism is coming from nowadays and not pretend like this is accurate representation of any film, show, game, or book's quality. Their issues clearly aren't coming from a reasonable standpoint because ultimately, I think Fionna and Cake Season 2 is really good. It never reaches the heights of Season 1 and there are some aforementioned issues, but its focus was clearly on the characters and everyone here had great arcs. I have always enjoyed this franchise and I can't wait to see what comes next from it. Whether that's the movie, the BMO preschool show I guess, or later this year, Side Quests, a spin-off that takes the show back to Finn and Jake's early standalone adventures. Okay, I can't blame them for this timing, but I am throwing my phone out the week it premieres. Hey,